So my favorite memory of my grandmother was not a specific memory, but I do remember how every summer she would make the rounds of all of her grandkids and stay with their families for a while every year. So every year I got to spend a couple months getting to know her, and she got to know me, and that would happen year after year. So even though we didn't always live close to each other, sometimes in different states, I feel like I got to have a full, real relationship where we both knew each other. And I like to think that all of her family felt that way about her. She was good at making time for everybody, and you could always tell that you were important to her and you were a priority, and she cared about what was going on in your life.
Well, I'm Julie Kroll, Bill Snyder's daughter, and my memories are, I'm going to give you two. The first one is being out at the farm. I'm not sure exactly where, but she was serving dinner to us all, and there was a huge platter of tomatoes. And some of us particularly loved fresh homegrown tomatoes, and we polished off the entire platter. And Aunt Phyllis went out to the garden and got more tomatoes and sliced them for us. I know there's just one of those funny memories I remember. And I remember my mom saying, "Oh, don't do that." And she said, "Oh, well, I've got plenty." So she went out and got some. And then my second memory is when the Ringgenberg family had a family reunion at the Land Between the Lakes. And we lived in Paducah. And so we went to visit them, and I just remember all of the joy that she had with all of her grandchildren, her children. I think everyone was there, and it just meant a whole lot to her, and it was nice to see.
I'm Don Kelly. Ran around with Sue and Steve back when we were in kindergarten all the way through, and I spent a lot of time at the Ringgenbergs, and Phyllis was always very caring and happy to see you, and it was nice to be around her when she was there. So I just remember I have her as being a very caring mother and friend, and I enjoyed being there.
I'm Terry Waters. The thing I remember probably the most in my childhood was that right across from the Ringgenberg house was the Autry home, and they had a nice basketball court. And we kids always ended up, if not every day, that wasn't 2 foot of snow on the court, we were probably there playing basketball. We were always welcomed. Phyllis always made all the kids feel welcome, and it was kind of the gathering point for our class. And of course then at one point we had Steve and Susan and Daryl all there in the Ringgenberg house, and so it was kind of a natural gathering place for those of us that wanted to have a good time, get together, and we always felt welcome. That was the big thing that Phyllis provided, I think.
Last night we were talking about just snapshots of memories, and my biggest snapshot is most memorable isn't necessarily Grandma herself, but the place in Missouri with, Tigger on the front porch, the tire swing, the big trees, the semi-trailer down the road. But I'm struggling right now to remember specific memories of Grandma. But just being at her place and Grandpa's place, I think that's what is in my memory the biggest or the most.
Mom and girls here. What I remember with Aunt Phil and the lake, we would go to Twin Lakes almost every Sunday in the summertime, yeah. And we would make fried chicken, and then we would go, and we had to wait an hour after we ate. That was one of the rules before we went swimming. And we had so much fun. And the adults would all sit out on the patio area and watch us and just visit. I don't remember drinks or anything fun, really. They would just watch us.
Yes.
And visit. Well, Grandpa and Grandma were there then.
Yes. Family time.
Yeah.
So family time for the cousins and family time.
We had a raft, and that was the most fun of anything this raft that that Grandpa had made, just a big inner tube,
Tractor
with
inner tube.
a plank on the top of it. We learned how to jump off, and some even learned to dive. Okay.
And I remember when I fell on our sidewalk and split my chin, and it was, do we go to the doctor? We call Aunt Phil. So of course we called Aunt Phil, and she came down, and I was so afraid that I'd have to have stitches, and she just butterflied it. And so I just was always so grateful to have a nurse in the family. And we spent so much time with the Ringgenbergs. It's hard to separate an Aunt Phil time and not include the whole family. But one of my favorite things I remember was when they lived right by the railroad tracks. And in the summertime, one of the best things that our parents would allow us to do is both the Ringgenberg kids and the Bauman kids, we'd get a sack lunch and we could walk on the railroad track, and then we'd just sit down and have a lunch. And it was like we were the boxcar children, sort of. It was so much fun. But Christmases, and we were very lucky to be able to have Aunt Phil and Uncle Dwayne so close to us for most of our childhood, and that Susie was like our best friend. So it was very special. So we were lucky.
Well, I remember even a bonfire at that house by the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And we roasted marshmallows, probably hot dogs too. But yeah, a lot of fun kind of cousin things.
Adventures, yeah. Real adventures where kids now are, you're so careful with them. And we didn't have to be so careful way back then. So we were lucky. We were lucky to have Aunt Phil for an aunt too. So thanks.
When I was in Georgia, we were going for a ride from Atlanta, I believe, to Connors, Georgia, and Phyllis was in the car with me and Daryl and Susan. And probably the boys, I really, memories kind of vague, but there was hot air balloons, like a balloon fest going on along the side of the road, and I thought they only had that in, like Albuquerque has balloon fests. And we just enjoyed watching them. Phyllis is, I have fond memories of Phyllis. I always have had. She was always nice to me.
Well, I guess to talk about my grandma, my favorite, some of my favorite childhood memories were going to visit with all of our family for a couple weeks in the summer and going to visit their house in Missouri. And one of my best memories of my grandma happened at their house there one of those summers. I think I was about 5, and she took me fishing. They had a little water hole in the backyard, just a tiny little pond, and took me fishing, and I caught my first fish, and it was about that long. And everybody was so excited. And at first I was really excited too, because I love animals and I thought this was just great, and I was watching it swim around. We took it back, we put it in the sink, and I'm watching it swim around. And then I start hearing the adults talking in the background about how this is my first fish and how I'm going to eat it for dinner. And I was like, oh no, this can't be happening. And then I said, no, I'm not eating the fish. And they said, oh, yes, you are. You have to. It's your first catch. You have to eat your fish. And I said, no, I'm not eating my fish. And they were really, really intent on this. Not my grandma. She was watching. She was listening. And I, being 5 and feeling so strong about this, and I burst into tears, and I'm sobbing, and I don't want to kill my fish. She finally says, okay, enough of this. She got a bucket, she put some water in it, we put the fish in it, she took my hand and we walked back down to the pond and threw it in. And that was, she was my rescuer that day. That has been my fondest memory of my grandma. There are very many, and she was always kind and sweet and compassionate and welcoming, and just, I always knew I was safe in her home and wanted there, and I don't know, I lived in her home for a while when I was a young adult one summer, and just, I don't know, there's lots of stories, but I'm blessed by my time with my grandma. I miss her. Didn't see her as much as I probably would have wanted to, but yeah, she's a very special person.